Welcome to Shoreline Learning and Development's video snapshots. These snapshot videos are designed to complement your existing learning materials. My name is Brent Walker, and the subject for this particular snapshot is TAEASS401B, Plan, Assessment, Activities and Processes. There are three elements within this subject. Determine the assessment approach, prepare an assessment plan, and develop the assessment instruments. To determine the assessment approach, we need to ask ourselves a few questions. What is to be assessed? When will we assess it? Where will we assess it? And how will we assess it? Let's have a look at the what first. What is the context and the purpose of the assessment? What is the pathway? Training and assessment, which purely and simply is teaching a subject and then assessing how much the candidate has retained. Or RPL, which is recognition of prior learning. What are the competency standards or benchmarks that the candidate has to meet? And what tools and instruments will be used in the assessment to determine competency? Then what equipment will be needed for the tools and instruments to conduct the assessment? When is purely and simply the time and the date of the assessment. Where is the address, the location. And the how is a little bit more involved. We need to look at the assessment methods and the requirements for each method. We need to look at the people involved in the assessment and what roles they play. We need to look at the people that need to be informed of the assessment. We need to look at OH&S issues revolving around the assessment and any other issues that may need to be addressed. So to prepare an assessment plan, we first need to determine the type of evidence we need to collect, the rules of evidence for the unit of competency, what methods we're going to use to assess them, and lastly, documenting the plan. So let's have a look at the types of evidence. There are three different types of evidence. Direct evidence is that gathered by an assessor through observation or questioning. It's called direct because the assessor is in direct contact with the candidate to record the evidence. Direct evidence is the most reliable form of evidence. Indirect evidence is obviously evidence that has not been collected by the assessor. These can be or can include third-party reports, video or audio evidence, projects, portfolios of evidence. And supplementary evidence, they include things like verified copies of past qualification, statements of attainments, detailed letters from employers, and even interviews with candidates and their current supervisors. The rules of evidence, there are four. Being valid, the evidence must clearly align with the requirements of the unit or subject. Sufficient, have they provided enough evidence to be deemed competent? Authentic, is it the actual candidate's work? And current, as a general rule of thumb, if it's within the last 12 months, it's current. If it's after that, then professional judgment might be required by the assessor. The methods of assessment: we have direct observation, which is almost self-explanatory. It means observing real work during real workplace time. It means observing work activities in a simulated environment as well, such as a classroom. Questioning: these can be written, short answer, multiple choice, essay style. It can even be verbal questioning. It may even be an oral or a written examination. Structured activities might be completing a workplace project, conducting a presentation, using simulations such as role plays, or completing a number of activities over time. And portfolios is providing a collection of evidence gathered by the candidate over time. And lastly, the third-party reports. It's a declaration of competency by a workplace manager or supervisor. So, we've determined the assessment approach. We've looked at the different types of evidence we need to gather, the rules of the evidence required, and the methods, or how we're going to conduct the assessment. So now we need to document it. This is a sample assessment plan. On the left-hand side, and highlighted in green, are the major headings. The purpose of the assessment is the first one, and the explanation to the right. This is where you provide the reason why the assessment is being carried out. The date the assessment is due. This is the date the assessment will happen, or when the evidence is due to be handed in to the assessor. The benchmarks or standards. This is the standard by which the assessment decision will be made. Generally, the standards for a nationally recognised unit of competency, such as the TAE, are called standards. Benchmarks may also include organisational standards such as policies and standard operating procedures. The context of the assessment is, this is where the assessment will take place. If the assessment will be spread over time and at a number of locations, each location should be detailed with respect to the assessment component that will be conducted there. The target group. This would include the names and a brief explanation of each candidate. Client arrangements. This shows evidence of collaboration with the candidate and the workplace liaison by stating any specific workplace arrangements, such as timing, access, location, resources, and attendance required for the assessment activity. The flexibility of the assessment. You have to document any known requirements for reasonable adjustment. For example, if a candidate has poor eyesight, you may state that additional time will be required, sight aids will be provided, or verbal instruction and questions will be asked. OH&S considerations. If you know where the assessment is going to be conducted, you should conduct an on-site hazard inspection and assessment prior to the candidate sitting their assessment. Assessment resources. This is the list of resources you and the candidate will require to complete the assessment activity. Assessment methods is purely and simply where you list the methods you will use during this assessment. Remember that any unit of competency requires at least two forms of assessment, such as observation and questioning. The next column is assessment tools, which simply lists the tools, which are also known as instruments, you will use to gather the information. These are discussed in detail in a following unit. The evidence required is state the types of evidence required as per the evidence guide and assessment guidelines laid down by the regulatory body. The competency addressed. State which elements, performance criteria or units are covered by each of the assessment methods, and there are a number of examples shown there. So when we're developing instruments or tools, there are two considerations. The instruments or tools are the actual activities or questions that confirm competence. The second consideration is procedures. The information and instruction on how assessment will be conducted and the expectation of everybody involved. The actual instruments are explained in better detail in the next unit of competency if you're studying the TAE. In TAE AAS401B, Design and Develop Assessment Tools. I hope you found this snapshot video of plan assessment activities and processes helpful. If you're studying the TAE, your next subject is TAE AAS401A, Design and Develop Assessment Tools. If you have any questions or concerns, don't hesitate to contact your trainer or your client services manager. The entire team at Shoreline Learning and Development is here to help you.